Hey everybody, this is Travis Pfeiffer bringing you a deck talk. I was kind of inspired by the YYT videos, and in particular I wanted to talk about my absolute favorite card this set, and the archetype that it's really just boosted to the next level, and that is Faris, our brand new multicolor fire water legend. Faris is just outright incredible. So I was playing Warriors of Light in Opus X when the Light Refia came out, and I mean, I liked it then, but Faris has just made it amazing. If you haven't seen this card in action, you can't really truly appreciate what it does. So Faris, of course, whenever she or any Job Warrior of Light forward enters the field, you get to reduce the cost of the next Job Warrior of Light by 2, or you can nuke an opponent's forward for 2,000 times the number of Warrior Lights you control. So as you get more and more forwards, the burst gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and it just creates this incredible chain effect that it's so powerful. So to complement her, I personally run the Light Refia. I run 2 copies of her, and to complement her, I also run 2 copies of Lunith, 2 copies of Arc, as well as 2 copies of Aegis. So they are there because when Refia hits the field, she will automatically search your deck for any one of those 3 Warriors of Light, and she automatically plays it to the field. So if you have Faris on the field, and let's say you have one other forward, so Refia is your 3rd one, Refia comes in, boom, that triggers Faris, which means you could nuke something for 6k or reduce your next one by 2. Then she's going to bring Lunith or Arc or Aegis in, boom, that triggers Faris again. Now you're hitting something for 8k. I remember the very first time I used this combo, Refia was my 4th forward, and I was playing against a Rampier deck, and they had a Shantoto Kane out. And so Refia came in, Faris trigger, killed the Kane for 8, and then I think Aegis came in, and then boom, killed the Shantoto for 10. It's so strong. And then Refia on her own, if you have 4 or more forwards of light, when she attacks, you get to choose any forward and just remove it from the game, which is insanely powerful. I can say this 100%. If I can get Refia to attack, I have not lost a match. And now that's not easy because opponents will very much go out of their way to get rid of Refia because they don't want her to attack, and you just start getting that removal. But anytime I've been able to actually get an attack off with her and remove something, game's over. I've automatically won at that point. And what's nice too is that before Faris came out, Refia was such a core part of the deck, but you know, she's in Diabolos range, she's such a big threat, people always target her, but now with Faris, it makes them choose, like, oh man, what, do I try to take out the Faris, do I try to take out the Refia? So it's so nice having the threat. The boys are just there for the power boost. This is very much like a get really strong, get really big type of deck, and good luck having your opponents get over it. You're never going to use you can't use Aegis or Arc's abilities. There's not enough of the right element characters. Lunis, you could technically, I think I used it one time to dodge a Bahamut Zero. I dulled the fire forward that they happen to be targeting, but for the most part, you're not going to be using it for that. They're just there because they trigger Faris's effect, they come in for free off of Refia, and again, they make the entire field stronger, which I promise you is still very relevant in this opus. New person we're running is 3 CP of the New Dusk. I didn't really care for the Old Dusk too much. He's nice because he draws you a card, but he requires another Warrior of Light on the field, and that is easier now with Faris, but there were still some times when he would be the only Warrior of Light I could put down, and so then I would just, I couldn't draw the card. Whereas the New Dusk, he seems a little situational at times, but what's great about him is that, especially if you have made him cheaper, like if you put something in first with Faris or Faris herself, and you choose the cost reduction, you can bring Dusk in for 1, then you pay a single water CP, and you bring in another person, and I've chained that so many times, and boom, 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 I'll get him in for 1, pay a single water CP, here comes another guy, now I've got 4 or 5 forwards on the field, blast something for 10k, feels incredible. And who else has gotten a huge boost in my eyes is this Light Wall. I wasn't actually a huge fan. So for me, he competed with the Warrior of Light legend from Opus 2 that it reduced the damage dealt to all Warriors of Light. Because the deck was a little slower, I really appreciated him being able to basically over-trade with anyone. You could basically always win combat, which I liked. But this new one, having this come in with Faris on the field, again, you're going to trigger Faris, so you can make your next 2 cheaper, and then whatever you reveal off the top, maybe you can play that for cheaper, and then he can nuke. And what's really great too is because when he dies, he goes to the break zone and he's going to pull back a Warrior of Light of 3 or less, which again, if Faris is on the field, will trigger her again. Like, I can't tell you how great it feels. I remember the first match I actually used Wall with Dusk. What I did was, I happened to have 1 water CP backup on my backup line. It was my opponent's turn. They swung in. I blocked with the Wall, so he traded. Wall died. Wall brought back in Dusk. Dusk triggered Faris, which killed one of their forwards. And then I tapped the 1 water CP. Dusk brought back, I think it was like Arc or Luneth or somebody. Boom, triggered Faris again. Like, it's just this crazy chain. So this Wall has gotten so much better because when he hits the break zone, again, if Faris is on the field, you're pulling back another Warrior of Light who is active too. They're not dull, they're active, so they can immediately block for you, which is great. Speaking of which, we have, I'll set them down here, 4 copies of 4 CP Aegis, and then I'll show you his targets, which are the 1 cost Soul, 3 copies of this Warrior of Light, and 1 copy of Porum. What's nice about this Aegis is that when he enters the field, you can play a forward of cost 2 or less from your hand. It doesn't have to be a Warrior of Light. So he can pull in any of these, he can pull in Porum, one of these 2. And then really the reason he's in here too is that he gives every other Warrior of Light Brave. So I'll just mention this now. I have gone back and forth between that Aegis and this new Aegis, the 5 cost one. They are both great. I don't think you're making a wrong choice by picking one over the other. And if you can make a version where maybe you do one of each, 2 and 1, 2 and 2, I don't know, because they're both fantastic. This Aegis can pull in the Light Wall for free, Faris for free. He can basically pull in anybody, any Warrior of Light in this deck for free other than Refia, which is fantastic. However, the Brave the other Aegis gives is so incredible because, again, you're going to have these big forwards. If you've got Faris on the field, your backup Sarah, and just one of these guys, Faris is a 10k, or Refia is a 10k, or this Wall is suddenly a 9k. So when you have all these big bodies and they're Brave, I've been playing a lot of matches on Octagon, and it's so hard to let go of the Brave because, especially nowadays, things are so quick. Having people who can attack and then still block for you is so useful. I feel like it's so easy to overlook how good Brave is, but again, especially if you're on behind, it's really hard to attack into your opponent because you're dulling your characters, which just gives them a shot to just, zoom in and knock you out. So having them still maintain Brave, it's so useful. I have very much gone back and forth on these 2. This is the one part of the deck I'm still not done testing because I just don't know, because both Aegises are great. I love them both. He can bring in more targets, which is fantastic, but he has the Brave, which is great. So, yeah, you're not making a wrong choice. If you put in this Aegis, definitely take out the Porum, because the Porum can't be cheated in. But if you're playing this Aegis, then that's why I slotted the Porum in, just so that way you're not locked to these 2. But speaking of these 2, Soul is, again, I've kind of gone back and forth on this new Soul versus the old one, but the new Soul is just so great because he'll have haste, as long as you control another Warrior of Light, and if he party attacks, it says you can search for a Warrior of Light of cost 2 or more and add it to your hand. And that's job, that's not forward, so you can pull out a backup Warrior of Light if you need to. You can pull anything out of the deck, and sometimes it feels a little bad just because Soul is so weak that it's really easy to pick him off. But the nice thing is, being able to search anything, I mean, that saved me in a match just last night where I was able to go find Faris. And that is what ended up turning the match. And then this Warrior of Light, this guy I think is also really easy to overlook, but if you control 4 or more characters, or 4 or more forwards, he'll gain haste, and then when he enters the field, he buffs everybody by 2k. So he's a great haster to bring in, especially off of Aegis. He can go right in, buffing the whole field by 2 is not irrelevant, and there's been plenty of times I'll lose this Wall, the Light Wall, and then when he dies, I'll bring this guy in, so now the board is bigger, which is like saved me if someone's trying to board wipe me with some kind of ping-based damage, and just, boom, he buffs everybody up. Yeah, all those are fantastic, and Porum's Porum. Get back a summon. She's really more in there just kind of for the burst, if nothing else. It's a burst. It's a water character. She can be played off of Aegis. So, yeah, let me know what you think, because, again, I wish there was an amalgamation of these 2, where it was like this one, 5 cost, and you can make him 8 if you have to, and he can bring in 4 or less, but then he also gives them Brave. Because at least in this deck, the whole party element that Aegis provides just isn't personally that useful. So, on to our summons. First we have Amaterasu, who is a fantastic summon, who's just been great in Opus 12, and she's really there for protection. Amaterasu, you know, if they've got a brutal on-entry effect, you can cancel it. If they've got Shantoto, because it's really easy for this board to go wide, and people want to Shantoto it, so if you can cancel that with Amaterasu, fantastic. It's just a great summon. It gives Faris and your others guys some protection, which is really good. Here we have 3 copies of Famfrit. So the old version of this I played before Faris came out kind of had more Porums, and it had the 4 CP Phoenix, so you could kind of recycle that, and you know, Famfrit with Phoenix. And like sometimes I'm kind of on Famfrit, because in general you don't really want the Warriors of Light in this deck to die. However, in testing, it's nice to have that burst, especially if you get someone that attacks you with early aggression. You know, there's a chance they can just hit that Famfrit and they're gone. And in particular, it works really well now with this Warrior of Light, where again, you can block with him, or if they're going to do something, you can purposely kill this with Famfrit. He'll go to the break zone, it'll bring in another forward, and if Faris is on the field, boom, Faris trigger. And so now they're dealing with more of a blow-up than they had originally anticipated. So in testing, I've actually found Famfrit to be really nice. And again, you don't just like use him in the sense of like, Faris is going to do all your work for you. So he's just there, it's like, oh, that forward's going to die anyway, let me Famfrit it, and then that way they're losing value as well. And again, him with the light wall just feels so great. 2 copies of Belias, the Aegis. Again, in the past version, having haste was so crucial to this deck because Refia really needed it. You know, getting Refia out, and then boom, she can instantly attack and remove something was so good. Whereas now it's not as needed, so I just kind of run 2 copies, and I'd probably, if I took Porum out, I'd put in a 3rd. But it's still, you know, it's a nice burst. It's a draw card, which is great. It can let you win in combat. It saved me against Abraska's Final Aeon. I love that summon. Can't go wrong with it. And then our final summon is 1 copy of the new Sildra. Sildra is fantastic. Anyone who's sleeping on this card, don't. That's what I'm telling you right now, don't do it. Sildra can pull out any water character in this deck, and it can also pull out any Category 5 characters. So it can grab Faris directly. I mean, she's a water character anyway, so you could grab her anyway. But I remember there was a game I was playing a while ago, and I mulliganed, and I had no backups. No backups in the first hand, mulligan, no backups. And I had Sildra in hand, and so I just cast the Sildra, and I pulled out 2 of the different water backups that I'm going to show you. And so then, okay, now I suddenly had a backup in my hand. Like, it wasn't a great play, but it was either that, or I think my other option was like jam out Lunith turn 1, which that doesn't feel good at all. So yeah, Sildra is fantastic. Probably my favorite backup, and the one you always want to see turn 1, is Cosmos. Cosmos really does a lot for this deck, and I'm always very happy to see her. So as you can see, we have 2 light characters. So if you've got Cosmos out, you're going to be able to get out both Woll and Refia. For the most part, it doesn't feel too constricting. There's only been a few times I haven't gotten Cosmos out, and then like I've had one of those 2 and I can't play the other. But for the most part, people are always going to be trying to get rid of them, so it's usually not an issue. But man, if you can get Cosmos out, what's also nice about her is that if you can get her out, now you can bring out Aegis or Arc without having to pitch another copy of it. You can actually tap for Earth or Wind CP. Cosmos is fantastic. There is a total of 5 light characters in the deck. Cosmos, 2 Refia, 2 Woll. And for the most part, I haven't really felt... I mean, there's on occasion, I'll draw 2 Refia. It's like, oh, great. My hand's junked up with light cards. So, yes, that's definitely a risk. But for the most part, I haven't found that to be a big issue. Next is 3 copies of Sarah. There's been discussion lately about whether the Anthem effects are still relevant, and in my opinion, they 100% are. They're more relevant than ever. Power still matters. If you have Sarah on the field and Faris comes down, they cannot Amaterasu your Faris. I mean, they can, and it'll cancel the trigger, but Faris will not die, and that is worth everything. If you have Sarah on the field, Faris, and a Lunith, she's up to 10k right now. And again, if they're Brave from Aegis, these guys are so big that, I'm sorry, that's still relevant. That matters, that having these massive bodies that, they don't want to trade with Dusk, who's a 10k. They don't want to fight this guy for a 9k and then lose and he's going to come back. And then Warrior of Light will come in, make them all even bigger. It's still relevant. The only thing that this sucks against is the new Diablos, which will kill anything that's buffed. But You know, that's just, for me, I would rather be protected against Amaterasu and keep things alive from Amaterasu than worry about that. If you're worried about that summon, yeah, that, you know, 100% this deck has no protection against that. But I absolutely love this card. I had a knockdown drag-out game where I couldn't get this backup out, and I lost it, and it was because of a power level. The other person's forward, I needed 1,000 more power, and I just didn't have it. So, to me, it's incredibly relevant. 2 copies, oh, sorry, I bumped the camera there. 2 copies of the water-based Moogle. Though this one taps for water and fire. Sorry about that, folks. And again, it's just a great way to help color fix. It's super cheap. You can bring it down early, and then boom, you can get your fire or your water. So he's fantastic. 3 copies of Arya 3. Generally, you only want to really play one, and then, you know, hopefully the other one's just hit and burst. But it's just a great burst because, again, it searches any forward in this deck other than Porum, which is fantastic. So great, great card. 2 copies of the new Sarah FFL. Man, the old Sarah could have been useful if it could bring light forwards. If it could bring this guy to the field, it would have been great, but it wasn't. So this one's great. Lets you search out 2 copies, or it lets you search out 2 Warrior of Light forwards, which is fantastic. The action ability is not great. I actually did use it once against an ice player to reactivate my soul. But for the most part, you know, it's just there for the search. However, what's really nice is that she's a job Warrior of Light. So if you have Faris on the field, and you reduce the cost of the next Warrior of Light by 2, and you can stack that multiple times, it counts for this Sarah. So you can use it for the Sarah to only make her 4, or heck, if you're able to use it twice, she can come down for 2 CP and then fetch out whatever you want from the deck. So she's been really, really good. These are kind of the staple backups. Ideally, as long as you get down like these 3, you're pretty much good. That's the nice thing, is that you don't have to have these down to, like, you know, bump up the front of the deck. That's kind of always an issue I had with like Scions of the 7th Dawn, is that you had to have backup Scions to make the, you know, Aegis stronger. And I love that deck, but, you know, here you don't have to get down to your Warrior of Light based people for it to matter. Now some kind of tech options. 1 copy of Ace and 2 copies of Eevee. This is kind of more just for cheap fire CP. They're 2 cost backups, which is nice. Vivi's a burst. I'm a big fan of bursts. And it's been surprisingly relevant, especially with things like Cryle or the new Ash before she gets her protection. You can kill her with either one of these cards, which is really nice. 1 copy of Minwu. Minwu is really, since I had to take out the Warrior of Light that protected everyone by 2k, he's been really great. Again, because there's a Barrel Eye running around, some people are using Barrel Eye Guido, Fina is still a big thing. So there's plenty of like ping-based board wipe, so for Minwu to just say, you don't even got to worry about that. And it makes it so, again, when you have these big beefy people that they can just block, you know, if Dusk blocks and he's a 10k and he blocks a 9k, he can just block over and over and over again. You know, they can't then just ping him off with 1. So Minwu is great. And then finally 1 copy of Sage. Like I said, he's not as relevant as he used to be. This deck really needed the haste because you really wanted to get the Refia and just haste it, but because of Faris, it's not as reliant on it, which is great. So that's it. So that's my version of the deck. I will link a description of it on FF Decks below. Here's a few other tech options too. Alchemist is really great, especially because in those matches where you really want to see a Cosmos and you can't get to her, you can trade in another dead backup to get the Cosmos. So I have found a lot of use for him. I just had to cut him for space. And then one that's definitely I've tried is the new Princess Goblin. And again, kind of like Aegis, I'm just really torn on this card. Paying 2 CP to search forward feels fantastic. It feels so good. However, it searches, you know, one of these 2, which on its own is great, but, you know, so that's light CP in your hand. You can't pitch it for CP now. And then the problem is she breaks when that character comes down. And I'm just not the type of player who wants to see my backups break, especially in a deck like this where I want as much value as I can get. However, there's no denying she did feel good to play, so this one kind of throw in if you like it, but if it's not for you, you know, take it out, not for me. Let me know what you think. Hope you enjoy it. It's really fun. I've just had a blast with it. Faris has just been amazing, and it's been so rewarding to see an art type that I already loved and already was playing, to like just get this massive boost. Let me know what Aegis you prefer when you test it out. And alright, I will see you guys next time. Bye!